Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, me, the Lou D-O-double-G, and I'm here with the ever beautiful B-double-O-M. Did you like that, Boom? I added that for you. I thought about that while I was taking a dump.
B-double-O-M.
How do you feel about that? Does that not roll off the tongue well?
I think it's just faster to say boom.
You think so? Damn, I was really hoping that I had did something there.
Yeah, you really thought you had something.
I mean, I was... Okay, well, I really thought I had something there. That's right. I'll figure out something else for you. The Lou D-O-double-G thing is kind of reminiscent of the Snoop Dogg's and Nate Dogg's, that kind of rap back in the day. But we'll find something for you.
Good rap.
Yeah, the good rap, exactly. Exactly. Oh, that's a whole other conversation we could sit here and have. Boom.
No, we could. We could talk about contemporary versus classic or just 90s.
I don't know what you would call
rap.
it. I mean, it depends what you call classic. I've heard a lot of people have different arguments about this shit.
Yeah. Just because there's kind of a very specific era for classic rock.
Right, of course.
But you never hear it, 70s rock, 80s rock. You could break it up like that, but it's just, it's still classic rock.
Yeah. No, I understand. But that's the thing, though, is that everyone has their own... to me, classic rap is just, in my brain at least, is 80s, 90s, you Tupac, Biggie, that kind of... Maybe that was the height of rap. I don't know if that's true, though.
I feel like it was the cultural height of it.
I think you're right, because...
Kind of like the same way that Selena was the cultural height of Hispanic...
Oh, yeah,
kind of music,
for
or
sure.
music in Spanish.
Yeah, at least in the U.S.
Enrique.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. That makes a lot of sense, actually, because now... I said the height of rap, but I actually kind of want to take that back, because, now we have so much rap. Is now the height of rap? Question mark?
Well, I would feel like that's kind of an argument between quantity versus quality.
For sure.
Because before we had Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, Eminem.
Very good rappers.
And now we have people like Kodak Black.
Yes, I agree. But now we also have who I think is a lyrical genius, Kendrick Lamar, for example. I think
Kendrick hasn't made music in years, my guy.
Since 2017, actually. Damn was his last
I know,
album.
and it makes me cry because he's a just masterpiece.
I agree. I agree with you, actually. 100%.
I love his music.
Yes, he does make great music. And I say what you will about J. Cole, but I actually do respect the guy. And I do like his music.
Jermaine Cole?
2014 Forest Hills Drive. If you want to make a campfire, all you gotta do is play that tape, bro. It's fire, fam. Oh, dude.
Start a new California wildfire.
Oh, shut the fuck up, bro. Too soon, dog.
It's not. If it's too soon, when are we gonna talk about it?
You're right.
I say it's not soon enough.
Oh boy. Anyways, Boom. How have you been, my friend?
Fine. Just moved into my apartment for this. I was gonna say year, but semester because I didn't start in the fall.
Right. You're right.
It was a real pain in my ass. There was a lot of stairs.
Right.
And stairs are my main weakness.
Would you say you're kryptonite?
I could.
You could.
I really could. Yeah. Well, I feel like it's a double-edged sword because I hate stairs.
Of course.
However, just from the second day of being here, my calves have been firming up something fierce. I'm really building my muscle back from quarantine. My calves just naturally look fantastic as long as I'm using them. The problem this last year was that I wasn't using them. Well, I was using them, right? But I wasn't using them to the same extent of everyday use of going out walking.
Of course.
Or going to a store or stuff like that. Because of quarantine, I was just home.
Of course. That's what you do.
So I was getting up, going to the kitchen, and going back to my room, continuing to watch Gintama. And that was it.
Nice. I, on the other hand, I'm, started school again, so here we are. Getting back into a groove, a schedule. I've realized that that's what I need to keep this thing going. Keep myself in a schedule. man, because it's just all hope is gone after I don't have one. You know what I mean? Like I feel like no work gets done.
Yeah, and I mean it's almost as if you don't have one.
Literally, literally, and he's right. He is very right. But with that being said, we do have some stuff coming up. So now that the podcast is bi-weekly, yes, I said bi-weekly. We're both very tired fellows. Me specifically. We have some changes coming to Geek Gourmet. We've talked about the boombox. We're implementing that segment into Geek Gourmet here coming up the next podcast. So obviously not next Monday, but the Monday after. We're going to have the boombox.
It's going to be quite good. I already know exactly what I'm talking about.
And I'm very excited to hear what he's talking about. And in addition to that, we're going to have some music, some intro, some outro stuff. I'm trying to polish this up. Improve and stuff like that. So yeah, stay tuned for all that. But yeah, man, this whole break, school and work and all that, I've been catching up with a bunch of shows and anime and stuff like that, dude. I recently saw Titans, and of course Wonder Woman 84 came out. And you saw Wonder Woman 84, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, I saw Wonder Woman 84, and I'm putting my foot down on this one. That movie is good. I don't care what anyone says.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad.
I feel like all of its strong points...
Can I just say this? I'm glad you said that. I'm sorry, continue. I'm glad that you said that. Continue. And I'll say right now why.
I feel like all of its strong points outweigh all of the plot holes and like nitpicks that it has, because it does have them. Mm-hmm. There's some dumb things going on. There's some things they don't address.
Right, and we vaguely talked about it at some point, right?
And its message, I guess, but more kind of its theming around the movie itself.
Right.
Is just like exactly what I felt that we need in a mid-pandemic world. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, can you guys please be good to each other for 5 minutes?
Right.
And I feel like we need more of that.
I get where you're coming from. I really do. I mean, if you look at it from that standpoint, I suppose the message is different for you, right? And I'm glad that you said you liked it for this reason, because I didn't like it. And let me explain why. But don't kill me, please, Boom. Because
I can't promise anything.
I really did go into this expecting something more, because the first Wonder Woman was much better, in my opinion. And you had told me whenever you saw it that you thought it was the best movie of the year, and I believe you said that, or one of the best.
I stand by it.
Okay. I just didn't want to take
considering, because there were movies that actually came out towards the beginning of the year that I really liked.
Right.
Like Sonic the Hedgehog, of course. And My Hero, Heroes Rising.
Oh, dude, that we can talk.
Also really good.
Talk about that movie, because I actually did watch that this break. Anyways, I'm gonna finish my thing on Wonder Woman real quick before I forget it. No, I just want to. I feel like, and these are just moments, and I don't think Americans' westernized entertainment is very good at crafting moments. I think that some of the moments that they craft are very dull, and for me, moments are the payoff to sitting here and watching your 2-3 hour movie, right? Like, the moments are the payoff. You know, you see Gal Gadot / Diana go through this whole thing, right? She loses her man again, like what Boom says, like, there's a lot of things I can forgive, like some of the plot holes, some of the what happened here, this is kind of confusing, because some of the movie was confusing. I had to even ask, I think I asked you, Boom, and I asked someone else, like, what the hell even, what just happened here? I'm so confused.
We had that conversation.
Yeah.
With, spoilers, skip ahead like 15 seconds, Cheetah suddenly not having her cheetah form, even though she didn't rescind it on screen.
Right, stuff like that. Like, there are little things here and there that I can forgive, but they do exist. But for me, huge moments, like the war armor, right? The golden or war armor.
Oh,
First of all, let me just say, and again, this doesn't necessarily break the movie, but it doesn't make it either, if that makes sense.
I feel like it was disappointing.
It was very,
I think
very disappointing.
it felt like it just kind of was tacked on
Yeah.
at some point instead of being part of like the main writing process.
I think that
just because it's introduced with Steve. Oh, hey, what's that?
Right.
And then she explains it, and then
it's kind of okay.
And then it's in the background. Nobody talks about it. And then she suddenly goes back as she puts it on, and then she has it on for like maybe a total of 5 minutes screen time, and it's over.
I think that's also something, and you know what? I don't even mind that she only had it on for 5 minutes. I don't necessarily mind that. It's the reveal, right? Like this moment needs to be.
The reveal of it was pretty mid.
The reveal of it needs to be bigger than life. You know, this is a transition between the Diana that we know from, you know, our time an hour ago, right, to the new Diana, and this new improved Diana who can fly, mind you, and make things invisible and all these other things, right? And she has had this whole horrible thing happen to her again. She basically had to lose the man she loved twice, right, which is not an easy feeling, I'm going to assume. And she was like a cocoon, now she's a butterfly, right? Like but we didn't see that big moment, and that's like one of my biggest issues with the movie is that the moments
of him like disappearing.
No. What do you mean? My biggest issues with the movie was that the moments weren't big enough.
I agree.
You know, they weren't big enough, and I think that while I would give it a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, depending on kind of what lens I'm looking through it on. That being said, I do give the first Wonder Woman an 8.5 or 9 out of 10 just because of what it is. Not necessarily like, oh, this is the best movie ever, but because of what we had before it. Suicide Squad, Dawn of Justice, like it was a really well-crafted movie and I enjoyed it. But with that being said, this movie was not a better sequel in my opinion, but I do respect you if you think that it was a good one because there are some redeeming qualities that come with it.
Now, I am going to say,
yeah,
I do prefer 84 to the original.
No, and I think that's okay. I think you can.
And I say that because I enjoy watching 84 more, despite all of its issues and despite the original with Gal Gadot being a much better film.
Yeah, and I think I'm cracking my knuckles here. I don't know if the mic caught it. I don't know if... No, well, I guess what I'm saying is I get that because there are certain things that I enjoy watching, right? Despite the fact that they're not necessarily great. Smallville, for example, not good. I can sit here and tell you it isn't my favorite TV show and it is not good. Like, by any stretch of the word. It is not.
Yeah, you can't recommend it to anyone.
No, because it's awful. But do I have a Funko Pop of Clark Kent from Smallville? Yes, I do. Have I watched Smallville, like, at least 4 times in its entirety? Yes, I have. So I understand that. I 100% do, and I respect your opinion. That being said, I don't think it was a much better movie than the first one. And I just wish the moments were bigger. Now, here's the thing, though. I think a lot of Western films, entertainment in general, is guilty of is not making moments big enough. You know, making... Because... And I say Western because I've watched, like, Korean movies, right? Or anime, for example, right? Like...
Oh, yeah.
Where their moments are huge. Like... And
they just hit... different.
They really do.
For a lack of better words, they hit different.
They really do. And maybe I'm spoiled. Maybe we're spoiled. Maybe we're like, we watch so much anime and read so much manga, and even in comics, I would even say to an extent, that moments are like, I feel like they grab a moment, right? And then everything comes before that. Maybe it's just a style of writing.
Did you read any of Death Metal?
No, I haven't.
Death Metal has some really good moments in it. I actually really enjoy Death Metal.
Really.
There's a lot of payoff from previous stuff There's payoff. Well, I say stuff, not like from like series before it. I'm sure there is that I'm just not remembering. But the moments that the story itself that it builds around itself. Not it pays off stuff from the original Batman New 52 run.
Right.
It sets up its own moments, and they're paid off really well.
And and I think
especially like centered around like the Bat family.
Speaking of Batman, right?
Yeah.
I have to bring it up because we're getting a movie based off of it, right? Are you going to read The Long Halloween? Before I say this, do you plan on it?
No, I don't have that kind of time.
Do you mind if I wanna say this thing?
Do whatever you want. I don't care.
You don't? Do you promise? Boom! I don't want to ruin this for you if you ever plan on reading.
Do whatever you want that will make you happy.
Boom! You make me happy. Anyway, so there's this. I'm not gonna say the whole thing, but there's this moment. Because as we know, The Long Halloween has a stretch of killings that happen on every holiday for a whole year, and so there's a big twist at the end. But what I think makes this twist work is the payoff, right? Because you're being shown this avenue, you're being shown, hey, this is what's happening, and the story plays off on this one side. But then when you turn to that last page, that last panel, it tells you who exactly was one of the main perpetrators of these crimes, right? And it's just like mind-boggling because all the signs were there throughout the comic, right? All the signs were there, and you never really realized it. Like it's almost as if they had this moment, and then they crafted everything before it to lead up to it. You know what I mean? And something to that nature that also kind of reminds me of is anime, right? And I mentioned it previously, and I know you agreed with me on this, but Naruto Shippuden, right? This one particular moment that's in my brain right now, I
really hope we're thinking about the same one because I was thinking about it.
Maybe, dude, we're on the same wavelength a lot. There's this one scene during the war arc when Naruto unlocks KCM2, and so KCM2, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, obviously Naruto has the Nine Tails inside of him. He has his Nine Tails chakra form, Kurama Chakra 1, which is just a chakra kind of around him. But with KCM2, Kurama Chakra, the second version or whatever, he gains this cool ass cloak, and it's just an amp on his power basically. And there's this one moment where I think Guy and Kakashi are like about to get bombarded with bijou bombs, and Naruto just kind of swoops in and like flicks them away, right? And in front of him, the light is so bright that Kakashi can't really see who it is, but all he sees is a cloak and a silhouette, and he's like, "Sensei, Minato, is that you?" Obviously, who is Naruto's dad, who before Naruto was like one of the strongest shinobi ever. And that kind of moment right there, the music, the intensity behind it, the payoff to Naruto's like emotional crap he's went through, all the training on Mount Myoboku, all the crap he's been through since his training, his master dying, spoiler alert, I apologize. All of these things happening led to that moment to being like, holy shit, is that Kakashi felt so safe in that moment that he thought it was Minato. Like that has to that moment right there, in my opinion at least, is super well crafted, and I don't know, and I don't really get a lot of that from these movies, right? That we've been watching, and I don't know. Again, maybe I'm spoiled. Maybe it's animation, and since it's animation, it's easier to do super big moments like that. But that is just something that just everything.
I think it has to do with the format.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Where a longer running series can set up moments in its first season, then have them resolved by the second to last or even last season. Game of Thrones is a terrible example.
Right.
Because it has all sorts of things set up towards the beginning, and then it falls flat in its 6th and 7th seasons.
Right.
There's kind of not a lot of reason to watch past season 5, in my mind.
Well, I will say this about Game of Thrones, is that I agree with you in that it is one of the few shows, and this again has to do with the writing and the format. I think you're right about that. Game of Thrones has this, I guess, this X factor in every season that you don't know what's gonna happen, right? And the X
Yeah.
factor,
And they've like shown that they don't necessarily care what is or is not canon to the original material because they'll change things.
yeah. So there's a bit with Catelyn Stark that they didn't put in there. There's a whole lot of things that they didn't put in there, and I know that what you're talking about. But there are certain things that I don't necessarily disagree with. I think that season 6 and 7 is really worth watching. I can say up to like the third season, the third episode. I'm sorry, because that's the Night King crap that happens. And I say that because it's more. Yes, I don't like that they kind of didn't necessarily do the best with the Night King, but I will say that Arya's moment is what makes that episode and what kind of makes all of this worth it. And by that I mean her whole thing, that her whole trials and tribulations and her story, like her moment doing what she does to the Night King is what makes everything for her worth it. You know, while I do agree with Boom that a lot of Game of Thrones is great, those last 2 seasons do fall a little short of, for example, season 4, which has to be one of the greatest seasons in like history of television. You know, like season 4 was amazing. But yeah, anyways, I think you're right. Yeah.
And like kind of like the other end of the spectrum is, well, have you seen Full Metal Alchemist?
No, I haven't, but that's on my list. So is Fire Force. So is Fire Force. Actually,
Okay.
I want to watch Fire Force.
So I'm going to talk about it vaguely.
Okay, go right ahead.
There's an outstanding moment that's built up in the beginning of the show and then gets paid off by the end of the show, where there's a guy who ends up getting killed tragically, and then his best friend Roy eventually avenges him towards the end, and it's the most satisfying thing in the world because of the way that it's portrayed, where Roy, usually being aggressive but in a calm way, turns into being aggressive in a bloodlusted way.
Right.
And has to be like pulled off to like have him stop.
Right. Well, that's probably like reflecting the viewers' frustrations, I would assume.
Like frustration.
Yeah.
Being angry, being sad.
Right.
And it's all very like relatable and stuff. And then there's moments in Naruto where like when Naruto in Shippuden comes back after getting Sage Mode.
Mm-hmm. Oh, dude.
For the big reveal on the toads in front of Pain.
Yeah.
And the smoke clears. When that smoke clears and it's just that zoom in of his eyes, that hits different. It really does.
Because at that moment, bro,
that's a scene that I'll go to YouTube
me
and I'll
too.
rewatch
it's
that
scene
where I love it.
Where Sakura's like, you know, crying and just crying, like they need a hero, and boom, here comes Naruto. Yeah. No, I agree with you. That has to be also
in the new form.
Yes, one of the.
Which honestly, it's a really great form. It's a really great form.
Oh, Sage Mode is literally.
I love Sage Mode.
The reason. Well, Sage. I guess Sage Jutsu in general is the whole reason why they won that arc.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of nerfed. Well, not really. Yeah, I mean, it felt kind of nerfed against stacking next to the KCM. But then once he stacked it on top of each other, it just amped the shit out of it. But yeah, no, that is a really well crafted moment. And again, you know, watching like My Hero, for example, right? Like watching
My Hero I wanted to talk about.
My Hero has
outstanding moments,
dude,
fire moments.
It's so good. It is
like I love My Hero.
Yeah.
But I think it falls apart when, and I've talked to you about this, like through text and stuff, how it falls apart in its slice of life arcs, because they always come after awesome, big, grandiose endings to really good, solid arcs. And then you're just left wondering, why the hell am I watching this? Please get on to the next stuff. And it's not even training arcs. It's just, I mean, yeah, slice of life arcs are cool and all, but when they follow up something like the USJ attack or Camino,
yeah, we were thinking about
I don't want to watch any of this. I want to get back to the good stuff. What are the League of Villains doing?
And here's the thing. I agree for this reason as well. I want to like kind of just throw this out here. Is that I felt like in terms of the League of Villains, I felt like we hadn't got a whole lot of them. Like I felt like there was no real reason to fear them. There was reason to fear
because they would just kind of show up.
Yeah. There was reason to fear One for All, right? There was
because they keep building him up until his like full reveal.
Right, there was reasons to fear him, but not really the League of Villains in themselves. Like, yeah, they do.
The League feels like Team Rocket.
They do. They really do. But boom.
Well, up until like where the manga is.
I was gonna say, but Boom and I have read the manga, and we're completely caught up. And I will say that this next season coming up is gonna be fire in terms of the League of Villains. Like they make their base Naruto training arc, and they're in stage mode after this shit. Like they come out of this arc that they're about to be in, and there's a lot of character development. There's a lot of things you find out. There's a lot of things that happen, and I feel
it's kind of the way I feel about. I don't want to like say something like slanderous or heretical. Mm-hmm. In saying that this arc reminds me a lot of... it feels like the tuning exams and how each of the characters mainly involved in the arc itself brings more to the table than they have prior to it and come out of it way more developed.
Yes, because of the situation.
So like Gaara is a good comparison in Naruto, where he comes into the exams expecting to wash Lee, and Lee breaks through his ultimate defense.
Right. And up to that point, I remember Gaara had taken out was it like an A-class ninja or something like that.
Yeah, so he didn't expect it to be like a fight, but Lee held his ground and more.
Right. And I mean, it almost felt like Gaara had to channel a little bit of that one-tail chakra in order to beat him, which I mean, I don't. That's probably like a little bit of headcanon there, but he definitely got really flustered and frustrated with the whole situation.
Because he never like expected anything like that for anyone to be faster than his ultimate defense.
For sure, and I agree. I think that
and there are characters in that League of Villains arc that's going to end up happening in the next season of the anime.
Yes.
That they have complete revamps of their characters in what I would say like their motivations.
Right.
Their strengths, their powers. With all sorts of great things happening with them as a whole.
And
it makes them really strong. Well, they make them much stronger characters than what they were before, because before, to me, they just kind of seemed like Team Rocket. Aside from, like, Shigaraki, because Shigaraki was actually doing things.
Yeah, but he was also...
Everyone else was kind of just doing whatever.
He was also kind of a whiny bitch baby before this arc.
Yeah, which this arc fixes.
Yeah, and more.
Because it finally explains everything.
And I'm pretty excited. about that. But, the interesting thing is going back to the kind of the Western entertainment versus not the Western entertainment, is like there are some things that just wouldn't fly, that people...
Shows altogether that wouldn't happen, like comics that wouldn't happen.
Right. There are things that like just would not fly in terms of like character, people, them writing characters, and then also just like the jokes that are made and just in general.
Jokes, fan service.
Oh, fan service is crazy. Yeah.
Kind of like types of stories that are being told. Just Western entertainment is usually like wash, rinse, repeat, hero's journey type stuff, which isn't bad. It's the hero's journey for a reason. But I really need them to mix it up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like the thing,
Like even in comics, how many Marvel and DC characters are almost exactly the same, just in different universes?
I would, yes. So then you would see like, I would compare Superman and Captain America to each other in terms of moral standpoints and just
Hmm.
kind of what they represent, you know?
Comparing Batman to Moon
Oh,
Knight,
yeah.
comparing the Joker to the Green Goblin,
Stuff like that. Yeah, yeah. There are normal
comparing
tropes like that.
Spider-Man to the Flash to an
To
extent,
an extent, I would say the
because
Wally West
they have
Flash for sure.
very, yeah, Wally for sure. There's like very distinct like character
Absolutely.
archetypes are there, the
Absolutely.
circumstances of their powers, that sort of thing.
Right, 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 right. And I enjoy a lot of relating to the villain. Because like a villain like Green Goblin, you can't really relate to him. And I think this is something that the Russo brothers did really well with the Marvel movies is Thanos, right? Is like
Hmm.
people make memes and are like, he has a point, but like
Yeah, the whole Thanos did nothing
yeah,
wrong.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
sure,
I mean, technically what he
but,
suggested
but
is
genocide is still genocide. He
yeah,
might have been on the right track. He was doing it all wrong,
right.
which is like the point of his character in the
Right
movies.
intentions, wrong execution.
Yeah,
Oh my god. So like yeah, that's that character type of character that just kind of makes you think is what a lot of anime does do and I quite enjoy, right?
yeah,
Um
and not all anime and manga do this. Some are pretty run of the mill stuff,
yeah.
but the really exceptional stuff is chef's kiss.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And here's an example, right? I actually have an example of this that I wanted to bring up is the I know you don't. I know you're not up to this point, so I'm gonna keep it kind of. I'm gonna keep it pretty vague, right? But still enough.
One Piece.
Yes, still enough information to where you kind of understand. And I kind of talked about this at one point. I don't know if it was on the podcast stream or just with you in general. One day we were talking on
Hmm.
Discord. But the Luffy and Katakuri fight was very interesting in that, and I think this comes back to it working so well because there was time to put into this, right? There was a whole like 20,
Hmm.
21 chapters of just this fight, right? The Luffy Katakuri fight. Um and it's crazy because Doflamingo before who was the villain of Just Rosa, which was an arc and an arc or two before Whole Cake Island arc,
Hmm.
was set up as the villain from the start, right? So he
Hmm.
and even into Punk Hazard, you kind of could foreshadow that Doflamingo was the main villain. So he was the main villain for the better part of about 2 arcs, right? And you had this whole time to build him up, right? This whole 2 arcs to build him up, 100 and some episodes, maybe close to 200 episodes. And don't get me wrong, he's a great villain and one of my favorites in all of One Piece, all of anime, really. And then you get a Katakuri, right? Who is not even the main antagonist of of the arc of the Whole Cake Island arc, but these 20 chapters of Luffy v Katakuri, and it's just the fight. It is just the fight. You only know him at this point as 1.5 billion buried bounty, and he is a Big Mom's one of the Yonko's Emperors of the Seas right hand men, right?
Hmm.
And this he is just known to be strong. That's it, right? But from the start of the fight to like towards the end, he is portrayed as a perfect character, as the perfect soldier, as the perfect human being. Like literally his sister says, "Oh, Katakuri is the perfect human being. Like you won't win, Luffy. Luffy, you won't win." Um so just that in mind that throughout the fight, it's all about mind games. It's all about is he really perfect or is Luffy weak? Like can Luffy actually beat this perfect person? They even
Hmm.
say Katakuri cannot his back has never touched the ground. Like they literally say that in the anime and in the manga. So then there's this whole like internal strife for Luffy And for us viewers, I would say more for us viewers, that's like, oh my god, can he actually beat Katakuri? Like, is this actually like possible? Like, you know, and you know, you can kind of always see like, okay, X, Y, and Z is gonna win, right? This fight.
Mm-hmm.
And really through that fight, you're like, there's a lot of character development for Katakuri, which is crazy and so interesting because there's little to almost no character development for Luffy other than he gets a new power, right? That's really it. Mm-hmm. And it's not really that crazy. I mean, it is kind of crazy and it helps him even now in Wano, but all of the character development was in Katakuri, was in the villain of this fight, which is so interesting to me because we don't have a lot of stories like this in the Western media, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? I mean, we've seen it in Game of Thrones with Ramsay Snow a little bit to an extent, right? But it's not something that we see a lot. But in this particular fight, a character who hasn't come back yet, but the very essence of the main character, literally, like, the whole fight was more about Katakuri than it was Luffy, which is so insane to me. Yeah. And I want, when you get to that point, boom, we need to have a long-winded discussion. The only thing I can actually
compare that to is another anime.
Right? That's what I'm saying. I'm hitting my head against the wall here.
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1, Phantom Blood.
Which I need to watch. I will say. I do need to watch.
And it's not really spoilers. Okay. But I assume that you know that the main villain of Part 1 is Dio.
Yeah, right.
So the way that Part 1 is structured, the first half of Part 1, at least in the manga, because I have the manga read up to the beginning of Part 6 at this point. The first part of Part 1, Phantom Blood, is it's basically from the perspective of Dio being the protagonist. Mm-hmm. And then it isn't until Dio becomes a vampire that Jonathan Joestar Jojo becomes the protagonist of his series, or of this part.
Right.
And so you end up with... So in the beginning, sure, the title character ends up being a side character. He's not that interesting. But because we have a fully fleshed out villain who is the focus, transferring the protagonist role to someone else for them to have their full character arc and for them to then end up fighting is crazy, because you don't see stories written and built that way.
And that's the crazy thing, right? And again, I have a feeling that there's a lot to be spoken about what you said earlier, in terms that there is time to flesh these things out. Anime, manga, and comic books too, give the time to flesh out these storylines. To give the what did you say earlier? The organization of the way it's written, time for it to work, right? And that kind of speaks a lot to quality, but also I feel like it's also a money thing, at least here in the U.S., right? At least here in Western culture, it's a huge money
I think
issue.
It has to do with safety.
Safety.
How safe
Elaborate
can we
on
make
that.
This?
Oh, I understand. Where you're like,
how safe
this is
for a studio
definitely
going to
make this money. This is definitely going to make money. Yeah.
It's not so out of the box that it's safe to put out, and people are and a general mass audience is going to stick with it.
Yeah.
Versus, this is going to be super out of the box. It's going to be super weird, and we're not sure if this is going to work out.
And that's what sucks, is that as a result, we don't get.
That's horrible.
We don't get like a lot of, I guess, new kinds of storytelling.
Yeah,
right?
And I would say that at least from the Japanese manga to anime pipeline, at least for Shonen Jump specifically, I don't know how any of the other magazines do it, but you see with Shonen Jump all the time, a manga will start in the weekly magazine or the monthly, whatever. It'll go for so many chapters, and then it'll end either because that's the end of the story, or it'll end because it wasn't doing well. However, after that manga had its short-lived life because it wasn't getting read, a new one's getting cranked out.
And
because
yeah,
the people making these manga are themselves. They're
right.
basically self-employed, licensed to have their manga put into the Shonen Jump magazine. Shonen Jump has like no stake in whether or not a magazine or a manga does well in their magazine
Mm-hmm.
because they know that someone else is just going to fill that new spot like the week or 2 weeks after.
And I'd
So
actually.
there's so little risk that there's a lot more opportunity for crazy and newly organized storytelling.
And I feel like there is now is the time now is and God, Endgame
Yeah.
was such a cultural like pop cultural shift or like a pop cultural phenomenon that I feel like now and maybe we'll start to see this as time kind of progresses, but now is the time to kind of for the U.S. Western entertainment to make a shift, right, in the way we tell stories, and maybe we're gonna see that with these Disney Plus exclusives, these Netflix exclusives,
Because they have much less to lose. The
right.
thing with like a TV network. So like let's just say TLC for an example.
Mm-hmm.
Just it no for particular not for particular reasons. Just that's the first thing that came to mind. I do enjoy some of their shows.
Yes, I do too, actually.
Um, so if they put out a new show,
Yeah.
it does poorly. What happens? No one's watching during that time slot. It's getting terrible ratings, and ad revenue for the network goes down.
Right. Right.
Which means that every show that they put on is a risk for the network from a ad revenue standpoint.
Right.
Can it be replaced? Sure, by other shows that they have on repeat. They just put reruns. However, no one wants to watch reruns. Reruns are only put on because they don't have anything new to put out.
Right, and that's why
And so they
Friends
need to wait
reruns
and
exist.
wait. Yeah, Friends has been rerunning for 20 years.
Literally, and I will say, take out that
The Office,
laugh track. It's
Parks
not
and
funny.
Rec.
Take out that laugh track. It doesn't exist. It's not great.
Friends doesn't hit the same way that people describe it.
No, it doesn't.
I'm sorry.
No, I agree with
But
you. And the Big Bang Theory, I
Big Bang Theory
feel
is the same thing.
way.
I enjoy Big Bang Theory to an extent, but I'm not there watching it. I wasn't there watching it every
I will
week while it
say,
was airing.
Young Sheldon's a little bit more enjoyable. Maybe just because there's no laugh track. But even then, like it.
Yeah.
There's
But I
something-
feel like the difference has to do with how fast can something new be made
Of course.
versus the risk.
Of course.
Because Shonen Jump has relatively low risk for themselves. A TV network has a lot more risk
Well, I think-
because they're working almost exclusively off of those ad revenues
For the
and whatever their parent companies are paying.
Right. But for the general audience, it's like it makes sense from a business standpoint. But for the general audience, people are so impatient that they just want to see things in live action. They don't want to sit down and read a manga or a comic book, right? Which is why
No, yeah, they just want to catch
comic
A
books.
lot of the time, it's just what's on TV? They'll watch it, they'll put it down, and not remember what they watched.
Right, and that's why comic books here don't do so well anymore, or not as well as they used to, because people are so impatient. And I feel like it has a lot to do with patience.
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff
for
like
the
that.
monthly releases.
Yeah. And I will say I'm actively reading comic books. Like right now, I read the first issue of The Last Ronin, for example, the new Ninja Turtle series. Great one, by the way.
Oh,
you should
yeah,
you should read it.
I heard.
You should read it, man.
I've heard really good things about that.
That first issue is freaking awesome. The next one comes out in February, I believe.
Okay.
But anyways, we can go to the comic book store. Boom! I can go pick you up. We can go where I bought it, dude. Let's make a fucking day out of it. Boom. Anyway, sorry.
Let's see if we can do it the next weekend. Whatever.
We'll my people will call your people.
We'll figure it out.
You are my people. Boom.
Yeah. No, and I'll call your people. You also being my people by extent.
No, but yeah, and it's because like I see these things and I'm like, this is a new way of storytelling. The Last Ronin, for example, for those of you who don't know, The Last Ronin is about the Ninja Turtles. So all 3 Ninja Turtles have died. There is one Ninja Turtle that is left, right? And he is out for vengeance. He is out to do whatever to, again, get revenge or whatever. And all 3 of the brothers have died. There's one left, like I previously mentioned. But this is a new story we haven't seen before, because previously we're like the Ninja Turtles, funny, light humor, four
and that one's
brothers.
supposed to be really heavy.
And this one, dude, just the first issue I read, I mean, it's so fantastic. Like, we get into the psyche of this last Ninja Turtle that's up. I'm not going to say who it is. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it, but I would highly recommend going out to your local comic book shop and buying this, because A, they need your help, and B, it is just a fantastic way that they're telling the story. There's flashbacks that are beautifully placed within the panels. There are, again, internal psychological strife that's happening. There are new people you haven't really heard of yet. There are also some familiar faces. Like, this is just an example of something that's good. But what sucks about the whole thing is that there's only 5 issues that are going to come out, I believe. 5 to 10.
Yeah, it's always
I think it's 5.
For comics, at least for me, I'm way more interested in reading spin-offs and what-ifs and limited series versus an ongoing run.
Right, and that's how I feel. And Red Hood and the Outlaws, for me, is kind of a good and bad example of this. And I say good and bad because Red Hood and the Outlaws, their volumes are very much like one cohesive story, which makes sense because it's a volume, right? But like, you had Death of the Family, for example. It's the 3rd volume of Red Hood and the Outlaws, and all the Bat Family comics that's Death of the Family storyline that happened, big event, right? So that's one cohesive thing. But then with that being said, it's like, that is a current run, and then there are dull moments in there, right? Because it is kind of, it's like a Teen Titan-esque kind of comic book in a sense, right? Like, these rogue people that are kind of just doing the thing, and they're a band of misfits. And we've here in the US, we've seen and heard this story so many times, right? And so that's why I'm with you like, I'm way more interested in reading these what if stories and these Elseworld stories.
Yeah, just stuff that's weirder.
Yeah. Marvel Zombies, you've brought it up before.
Marvel Zombies is great. Deceased is great.
Deadpool's Secret Wars.
I think I like it better. Oh, Deadpool's Secret Wars was cool.
Dude, his blonde hair was so
I really
beautiful.
like that one.
That one was so good. Deadpool versus Thanos. Deadpool versus Carnage. Dude, the list goes on. Like, fuck. Yeah. These are awesome. These are really, really... Deadpool and Spider-Man. I have the first issue.
What was it? Masters of the Universe versus Justice League?
Oh, man. Yes, bro. Yes.
Was it Batman versus TMNT?
Yes, dude. All of it. Yep. And that's the crazy thing, though, is that, like, these things work. I mean, I'm looking at my comic book little cubby I have here. Watchmen is a good example. I would even say that, not to say that, like, main continuity storylines aren't great. I mean, look at Crisis on Infinite Earths, right? Like, that was a huge thing. It was great. We loved it. Death of Superman, another good example. But
I think that those are really good. However, so with the mainline stuff, you have to read for at least 2 years
before you get to
before a big event happens, and then there's a payoff.
Yeah, Court of Owls.
And then at that point, you don't care what happened 2 years before. You're only going to be talking about the payoff in the big event.
In Crisis on Infinite Earths, in this specific example, right?
Yeah. Nobody talks about the lead up to that.
No.
Everyone just talks about the crisis.
Right, because I'm looking at my cubby here, and I have 2 copies of Crisis on Infinite Earths. 2 of the same fucking copy, because I liked it that much. Boom, you were actually with me when I bought one of them.
Yeah, I was. I remember that.
The Killing Joke was a good one. Anyways, I mean, the list goes on. I mean, but at this point, I very much enjoy reading these Elseworld stories. When we're talking about Marvel DC specifically at this point. But yeah, I mean...
What I'm not a fan of, speaking of like these events...
Yeah.
Are all the tie-ins. Why the hell do they make like 30 tie-ins for one event?
Oh, you're talking about the Arrowverse. That's... When you said that, I'm thinking about the Arrowverse.
Man, I'm thinking about Civil War 2.
Oh my
I'm
god,
talking about
dude! Civil War
Death
2 is
Metal was
so
actually
long.
pretty bad about it.
Yeah.
Were some other ones? Did Spider-Verse have any? I don't remember Spider-Verse having that many.
Spider-Verse had some, but it
War
wasn't a
of the
lot.
Realms.
Uh-huh.
War of the Realms had a bunch of different tie-ins to the point where to get the full story, you needed to read the tie-ins. You couldn't just skip them, otherwise you'd be confused as to what everyone else is doing.
That's the good thing about, I will say, Death of the Family specifically. Because I don't know if you read them, but this is a New 52 thing. This was before Rebirth. But Death of the Family, I read that volume for Red Hood and the Outlaws, and I didn't have to read any of the other stuff from the Bat family to understand what was happening. So I will say, in that tie-in, in that big event, I was okay with it. Because, I mean, it worked, and it did fine. Of course, it wasn't like the biggest thing. It was no Crisis on Infinite Earths. It was no, what was The Killing Joke. It was no Death of Superman, right? But it was Death of the Family was an event, and I will say it did work fairly well. It wasn't anything crazy big, but I think it worked well. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, another issue
need to go back and read it.
With the big events is that the big events are big events for the majority of different comic runs happening at a specific company.
Right.
So if you're not caught up with everything that you need to have already read prior to that event, you're going to be lost on some of the plot points.
I feel like that.
So, like for my example, for War of the Realms,
Right.
I read Thor: God of Thunder. I didn't read Thor: Goddess of Thunder.
Oh fuck!
I didn't read Mighty Thor.
I read.
I read some of Thor, Reborn, and I wasn't reading the Avengers comic at the time.
I think I read. Was it the New Illuminati? I don't remember. I think it was. Or no. It was it Thor Goddess of Thunder? Anyways.
And guess who's a big character in that event? Jane Foster.
I was going to say,
who of her 2 runs I didn't read.
Was she in the New Illuminati? I don't remember. No, she wasn't.
I don't remember. I don't think she was.
I don't think she was. You're right. I don't think she was. But she did have a run-in with one of the characters. I can't remember right now. But anyways, yes, you're right. And that's kind of interesting because that's how the Arrowverse very much works. Like, you had to sit there and get through Legends of Tomorrow, which is not a bad show. I very much enjoyed the first season. I haven't watched anything after that. Of course, I was caught up with Arrow, Flash, all these, Supergirl. I haven't seen the last big event, but the one prior to that, like, I was caught up. And that's, I don't know, I wonder if Marvel's kind of the reason that we have these things. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if Marvel's the main culprit and people just kind of copied that model. I will say, though, that is a conversation for another podcast, because that is a whole thing I feel like we could sit down and dissect, because there's so many layers to why that worked and why it's no longer working, in my opinion.
Why moments work, why moments don't work.
Right.
Why setups to moments can be great setups and then there's bad executions.
Right.
Kind of rounding back to the Wonder Woman 84 stuff.
Yeah.
How a lot of the stuff in there kind of falls flat.
Right.
But for some reason, my theory is just kind of that pipeline from manga to anime that's consistently there without risk to the manga publishers, for the most part, that they're able to get some crazier content out there that hits kind of different.
And you see new authors
like
almost every
Attack
time.
on Titan would not air in the West.
Oh,
if it were made and written in the West, it wouldn't go very far. I don't think it would either go nowhere or go very far. I think because I was thinking about it, like, well, there's not a lot of stuff like Attack on Titan. Well, no, there's stuff exactly like Attack on Titan. It's called Game of Thrones. And it did really well for 5 seasons.
Yeah, and Game of Thrones. They say I've read somewhere that Attack on Titan is Japan's Game of Thrones, which I can very much see, and it's become really huge here too. So, but everything that I'm taking off of what you just said is that risks. No matter what it is, they are taking risks. So I want to leave everyone who's listening to this podcast who has gotten this far, thank you so much for listening to us babble, by the way. We love you. Is a quote by the one and only Monkey D. Luffy that literally says, if you don't take risks, you can't create a future. And I think that quote very much applies to this conversation. Like, we don't have a future in Western entertainment working very well if we don't take risks, people. Take notes. I feel like big producing companies should take notes from us, Boom. I'm just saying. I think we say a lot of big brain things. You know what I mean?
We say plenty of yeah. Well, I was gonna say I had a big brain, but apparently I don't. It's just short fried. However, I am big smart, and that's what matters.
That is what matters. But we'll see y'all next week with a new and improved Geek Gourmet. Thank you very much for watching. Big brain.
For listening.
Big brain. Thank you very much for listening.
And as a teaser for anyone who made it this far, next week on the Boombox, I'm talking about leitmotifs and motifs in music from games and anime.
And there you have it. Bye.
Bye.